and welcome to chapter 3 in this video series. And in this chapter, we will look at the introduction of sprites in Unity. So, we now move on to the index for this video, which is the introduction of sprites, implementing basic movement, and applying sprites to the player. So, in the previous video, we just took a review from the first chapter as well as setting up our project. Now we will go into one of the first processes in making a 2D platformer, and that is introducing sprites for developers to use for their player, for the environment, for the enemies, etc. But we will, of course, start off with the basics. So, just a very quick rundown: sprites are 2D images integrated into a game scene meant to give animations to characters, environments, and other game objects. So we have some examples of sprite sheets, such as this one for Mario, where you could see him running, jumping, holding something, swimming, etc. We also have this one for Yoshi. So these sprite sheets typically contain all of the animations that the character will have. So as mentioned previously, maybe for walking, an idle animation, for running, jumping, etc. So now I will show you how you can integrate this into Unity as well as giving movement to our player. So let's go into Unity. So now that we are in Unity, let's try to create a scene where we can demonstrate how sprites function. So firstly, we left off with having a floor. So let's just create a ground for the player. That should be good enough. Now let's add a box collider to it. This is so that when the player comes into contact with the ground, they won't just fall right through it. So now we can create our player. Now we'll make it a empty game object first because we will put the sprite renderer. This is where you can put image of your sprite, maybe just the standing position of the player. Let's add a rigid body, which will be very important in the physics department of our player. So what we need to take note of in the rigid body is the collision detection needs to be continuous. The sleeping mode should be never sleep and interpolate as interpolate. This is so that the collision detection will always be on and will not sleep during any point in the game running. So now we're going to add a box collider as well. Oh, sorry. We added the wrong one. Box collider 2D. Okay, so that sets up the player. So now we will import a sprite sheet. So one of the important things I forgot to mention in the previous video was creating a necessary tag for the ground. So it's very simple on how you do that. You just click on add tag. Let's add ground, which will be important for our C# script later on. Then we'll put it here in the teaser layer. Alright, so now the tag is set up, so now we can close that. So in importing a sprite sheet, what we have to do is to just click import new asset. And I have a simple Mega Man sprite sheet. So for slicing your sprite sheets, all you have to do, make sure your texture type is set as sprite 2D and UI. Make sure the sprite mode is multiple. Click apply. Next we go to the sprite editor, and everything here will be very simple. So we will be using automatic, but in case you have different sprite sheets or Unity isn't able to automatically slice them, You can have it grid by cell size, grid by cell count, or even isometric grid, depending on how your sprite sheet looks like, and you can adjust it by yourself. So we're just going to slice. And now we can see that Unity has sliced the sprites for us. So once we hit apply and close, we can now see that all our necessary sprites are ready to use. So once that's finished, let's head to the player, head to the sprite renderer, and let's assign this one. Alright, Mega Man 0. So now we already edited the collider. Let's just double check to be sure that we can get the collisions properly. That seems to be just right. Alright, so now that's done. Now we are ready to give animations to our player. But first, have a let's take a look at how we can make our player movement. So here is the player movement script that I have implemented that is based from my previous works on 2D platformers or games that use similar controls in 2D. So I will do my best to explain what I have implemented within this code, and we will be using the player movement script moving forward when we head to the animation part of this video. So first we need to establish our variables. So we have horizontal, we have our speed, jump. Jump is mainly going to be used for the jumping power, how strong the player will jump after clicking space. Then calling the rigid body 2D, just making it short for RB if the player is jumping and if the player is facing right. So to use for left and right movements, we use input get axis or horizontal. This is so that we can get the value depending on the input of the player when they click A, D, or left arrow, right arrow. So it will be -1 and +1. Next is how fast the player moves with the velocity. Then this is mainly to check if the player is grounded, then the player can jump, and at the same time also preventing double jumping. Then we move on to the dynamic jump height, where in this part of the code, it will show how high or how low the player can jump when pressing or holding space. And next we move on to private void on collision enter 2D. This is mainly used to check if the player is on the ground. And on collision exit, on the other hand, is to check if the player's in the air and if they can jump again. So specifically for this part of the code, if the player is in the air, they won't be able to jump again since his jumping is now set to true. And lastly, private void flip is just to simply flip the image of the sprite depending on where the player is moving.
So now that we understand a portion of the script or what we have written so far, the next episode will further continue on chapter 3, particularly in the animator component and animating our animations. Specifically, we will be animating our running animation, idle animation, and jumping animation. And we will also be showing how these animations are influenced in the animator window so that we know how they interact with each other and in order for the game to play these animations much more smoothly. So I will see you in the next video and thank you again for watching.